Hello, everybody, and welcome to the final episode of the Cassie Gopal podcast. As you know, we have previously talked about the rights of LGBTQ plus individuals as well as the rights of sex workers, and today we will be talking about immigration rights. Immigration enforcement is handled by the federal agency, the Department of Homeland Security, more specifically a subsidiary agency called Immigration and Customs Enforcement. My question today is, how is ICE allowed to get away with the amount of violent force used on immigrants, legal or otherwise, and on protesters? To answer this question, this podcast is split up into 3 parts, so we could look into the policies in place for ICE agents and immigration enforcement, the different cases of what happened to protesters, and why it matters in the context of the modern political climate. Before we jump in, I wanted to give a quick disclaimer that everything going on in America right now is happening very quickly, and the Trump administration is actively attempting to conceal what is truly happening to immigrants in ICE custody. But from what we can see from how they interact with protesters, there is an excessive amount of force being used. The situations that are being reported on are on the primarily white victims, so that is what I will be talking about today. Without further ado, let's get into our topic. The first example of immigration control can be traced back to 1876 in the case Chilung versus Freeman, when 22 women departed China on a boat, only to be detained at the dock, lest they pay a $500 bond, which is about $15,100 USD today. This was partially due to the large amounts of racism towards Chinese immigrants in California. These women challenged their imprisonment and won, establishing the precedent to future immigration policies that they were to be handled by the federal government rather than by the states. United States immigration control and enforcement began in 2002 during the Homeland Security Act. The act established the Department of Homeland Security as a federal agency, with ICE being a subset. Border control became a more pressing issue in the minds of Americans after the events of 9/11, with bigotry and xenophobia being a large contributing factors to the push towards decreased immigration. During the Obama administration, around 2.4 million illegal immigrants were deported, a majority of whom were without criminal records. ICE, as we know it today, began during the second term of the Trump administration, with Trump beginning to rescind Obama-era legislation that protected important areas like hospitals, schools, and places of worship, which enacted a large wave of deportations across America. ICE agents, which were not trained police officers and instead regular citizens, were advised to racially profile individuals and use excessive force. On March 15th, Trump invoked the Alien Enemies Act, allowing immigration enforcement to enter residences without a warrant, and also denying the alien, aka the illegal immigrant, of a hearing, appeal, or judicial review. This allows illegal immigrants to be detained and deported quickly, and often imprisoned in El Salvador. On July 4th, 2025, the One Big Beautiful Bill was passed, allocating millions of dollars for ICE, allowing for unprecedented levels of force. And in late November 2025, the first ICE raids took place. ICE currently has over 20,000 agents, 60,000 individuals in custody, many, over 70%, without a criminal record, and has killed or fatally injured over 50 people. The combination of the invocation of the Alien Enemies Act, with ICE agents being anonymous to protect their identity and protect their family's identity from doxing, has created an environment that supports excessive force and violence against illegal immigrants and protesters alike. So now that we have discussed the history of ICE and the factors behind the legalities of their practices, we can look at how these policies look in the real world. A majority of information about the details of what is truly going on in detention centers like the South Florida Detention Facility, aka Alligator Alcatraz, has been heavily obscured in the media, meaning that we really don't know what these individuals are truly going through. However, we can see the force used by ICE against those protesting. One very popular case was the story of Alex Preddy, a 37-year-old ICU nurse who was shot 10 times while attempting to help a pepper-sprayed woman. The agents saw and removed the legal firearm he was carrying, citing it as the reason for the shots. The Trump administration has tried to push the public narrative that Preddy wanted to attack and massacre the agents, but several bystanders' accounts confirm the story shared in the video. To this day, the agent that fatally shot Petty has not been charged, further promoting the force. One more thing is that the man in the bottom right corner with the mustache was the man that shot Alex Petty, Jesus Ochoa, I believe. He goes by Jesse, and he has not been charged. Another heavily publicized case surrounding ICE protest was the murder of Renee Nicole Good, a 37-year-old poet and writer who was shot in her car when agents claimed she was blocking them from their operation. In reality, Good had been stopped by ICE and shot as she was following instructions to drive away. Following this event, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said the agent was only acting in self-defense and even called Good a domestic terrorist. A case that relates to these two separate instances of ICE's brutality is the case of Tennessee v. Gardner. In this case, a police officer shot a teenage boy in the back of the head while he was climbing a fence. The boy was a suspected burglar, and the police officer said that he believed the boy was unarmed, but feared that he would escape if he not stopped. At the time, this was in accordance with Tennessee law, but the boy's father filed a lawsuit, saying that his son's constitutional rights were violated. The father won, and the judge held that police may not use deadly force against an apparently unarmed, non-dangerous fleeing suspect merely to prevent escape. This case connects to my topic because it outlines that both ICE officers that took the lives of Petty and Good were acting unconstitutionally, as both were unarmed and non-violent at the time of shooting. That being said, both agents have not been penalized for their actions and have instead been praised for their bravery by members of the Trump administration. Now, you may be asking, why should I care? I'm not American, I'm a citizen, and all my family are too. My answer to that is empathy, yes, but mainly because this has a great impact on the rest of the world. The United States of America is the richest country in the world by GDP, generating over 26% of the global economic output. The problem of ICE can be seen as another step in the waters of authoritarianism that Donald Trump has been alluding to since the beginning of his first term. By limiting the rights of immigrants, women, and LGBTQ+ individuals and more, the Trump administration has created a state unconstrained by the limits of due process, independent media, or the Constitution. This allows corruption to run rampant and spread through the government. The issue could also be seen as a diversion technique, meant to distract the public from the greater issue. By keeping the masses focused on the social issue of immigration, which is quite divisive and nuanced, the majority of people forget about the declining economy and rising wealth inequality that is affecting their daily lives. Another example of this might also be the release of the Epstein files, which is definitely timed, and many other things that can be seen as diversion tactics. In conclusion, my initial question of how is ICE allowed to legally get away with the amount of force used is simple. The problem is not in the immigration enforcement itself, but rather in the amount of power given to the authority of the state. The justification of the violation of constitutional rights is a slippery slope to a totalitarian state, where the average citizen is powerless to its leaders. All we can do as citizens, and also as not citizens of the United States, is speak up for people that do not have a voice. Thank you for listening to the third and final episode of the Cassie Gopal podcast. And remember, everything is political.